Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing this. How are you, Tracy? Normally I could just as easily wing it, but I know Dennis likes things to be handled exactly as they're supposed to. Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, it's an honor again to be with you. I will tell you that I'm serving this year as the chairman of the board of the Martin County Commission, but as Dennis said, I represent Palm City. And this is very personal for me, as it is for all of you that would attend. I was born and raised in New York, grew up on Long Island, worked in New York City, and was in New York City on September 11th, which also, like today, was a Tuesday. If you remember, it was primary day in New York City. And I worked in Midtown, but I worked in a building that was tall enough, and it was the first tall building coming from downtown to Midtown. It was on 39th and Broadway. And our offices, we had the full floor, and we had the ability to look out the window all the way downtown to the towers. So I would tell you that I had sadly, I had a front row seat to what happened on 9/11 in New York City. I had mentioned to a couple of folks here, I lost several friends that were there, brothers. One was a New York firefighter, the other was an NYPD. And one of my childhood friends that I grew up with, he's a New York City firefighter. And yesterday, his son and daughter, they moved up to Vermont. And his son and daughter, they had an assembly at their school, and the daughter, who looked like she may be in 10th grade, she gave a presentation of what that day was like for her dad. They happened to be on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, but when they heard what happened, they packed their car up and went home. On September 12th, her dad went to Ground Zero, which they were calling the Pile, in hopes of rescuing many of the lost souls. Now, we all know that very quickly it went from a rescue to a recovery. And also my wife's brothers, her grandfather, her father, and three of her brothers, all three of her brothers, and now her nephew were all New York City police officers. In the weeks following, all three of her brothers, who were all in their young, early 20s, they were stationed there. They had jobs like sifting shoes, and many of the shoes were full. And what had happened is everyone so anxiously, Dennis says, you know, I'm off script, Dennis. I apologize. Everyone that has that heroic volunteer patriot spirit, they didn't wear masks. They didn't concern themselves with what was happening there. They just went. First responders and fire and rescue, paramedics, folks from general services, people that did rigging work, people that operated heavy equipment, they went with and I was in New York City those days following. No one thought about what could potentially be in the air, what you could potentially be digging through. So when I hear people, and it really sickens me, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, when you hear people say, 9/11, seriously? Still? Yes, still. Still 9/11, and I'll give you a reason why. Because we know that 2,977 civilians were killed that day. We know that 343 members of firefighting teams were killed that day. We know that 71 police officers were killed that day. But what most people don't know, and I'm assuming this crowd is tuned in, and you probably do know, but since June of 2018, 9,795 people have come down with 9/11 related cancer. Okay, nearly 10,000. Of those, 420 have passed away, and of those, 170 of them were firefighters. So yes, 9/11 still, 9/11 still. And how about the fact that we've been fighting the war on terrorism for 17 years? Thousands of American heroes, men and women, have been lost in that battle, because I don't believe it's a battle that we could potentially ever win, because the opponent is a coward. And we have to be right, and you've heard this before, we have to be right every single time, and they have to be right once. So with that in mind, I'll go to my official remarks. So, like all of you, this is extremely personal to me. Will everyone please rise for the posting of the colors? Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Thank you to the gentleman who brought the flags in. We appreciate that. We would like now to introduce the Daughters of the American Revolution, Halpatioke chapter from Stuart, Florida. The mission of the DAR, is to promote historical preservation, education, and patriotism. They will now lead us in with the America's Creed. Ladies, welcome.
Please follow my lead. We have given copies of the American's Creed. Recite it together. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy and a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
Thank you. Please be seated if you are sitting. There are some chairs and benches here in the front. If you're standing and you choose not to be, there are some seats here. Oh, I probably had you sit down too soon. Is Darrell McGill, that's you, sir, will honor us with the national anthem. How about standing again?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Darrell, very much. I was actually going to wear the exact same suit tonight. Because of daylight and timing, we would like to focus on an annual tradition started 3 years ago in memory of a very special girl. The USA 9/11 first responders met a beautiful young girl named Holly Harris and her best friend and grandmother, Mary Harris, at an event on 9/11 years back. Holly had the most beautiful smile, along with her eyes that said so much and had so much meaning because Holly couldn't speak. and the relationship turned into an everlasting one. Holly and her grandparents, Mary and Ken, would participate in events from 9/11 tributes to parades and Christmas parties. Holly was a miracle child who left this world too young at the age of 29. Her grandmother Mary is now also no longer with us. And we would like to have two special butterfly releases tonight, one for Mary Harris and one for Holly and the 8 children of 9/11. Ken Harris, the husband of Mary and grandfather of Holly, would like to unveil the first butterfly release in Mary's memory, along with her sister Dorothy Zito, who flew in from New Jersey to be here tonight. Welcome.
Come on, guys. They wanted to say and show their love. That's right.
And I like a little bit more daylight.
Very nice.
There's one right there. I believe he's sleeping. If we could now have the students come up with the Harris family to unveil the butterflies in memory of Holly. You guys did that together. You were supposed to do it one at a time. I'm not mad. Dennis is probably not thrilled. In memory of Holly and the children of 9/11 and the family of Matthew Balash, who left us also too soon. Every year at this time, so many memories come back from the events of September 11, 2001, and certain groups of people are always remembered first. New York City firemen, New York City police officers, and office workers. However, this year, we would like to highlight the 8 children of 9/11. These children were children that were on the airlines that became hijacked by terrorists, who their mission was to cause destruction in any way that they could. But these innocent children were on a different mission. They were going places that brought fun and adventure. Some were going on school trips, others were going to Disneyland, and some were being reunited with loved ones. We will never know what they felt or what they went through. But as Americans, we do know that they were children, and we do know that there's a special place for them. So we decided that tonight we would bring their names present, so all of us will know who they were, and to show our respect for these innocent children. From the Martin County High School, we have a group of students from the drama club, and we also have from Gertrude Walden Center, Antoine Mitchell, Jermaine Alexander, and Haley Johnson. From Martin County High School, we have Mikey Farrat, Emily Campbell, Julia Fee, Lilu Veem. How'd I do? Well, how about you pronounce it for us? Zeem. Well, I have a Z. I have a V. So blame Dennis. Taylor Nazo. Do you want Daryl to sing first, Dennis? Okay. So they're going to run through this now?
So Mike, you lead it off.
So what I would like you to do, so everyone can hear you, come to the microphone, hold your picture so that people can see it, and I know you're going to do some reading, and then each of you will take your turn at the mic. Thank you.
David Gamboa Brandhurst was only 3 years old when he was killed on Flight 175. David's adopted parents, Daniel Brandhurst and Ronald Gamboa, were also on the flight. They adopted Daniel at birth, and according to friends, he was the loving focus of their lives. If Daniel were still alive today, he'd probably be getting his degree in agricultural science. and would be living life to the fullest.
Bernard Curtis Brown II was a studious young man who loved school. He is another victim of 9/11 whose story comes with some heartbreaking irony. His father worked at the Pentagon. His mother, Sunita Brown, told NBC News that she received tons of phone calls that morning checking on her husband, but thankfully he was out of his office on a golf outing that morning. That relief then turned to huge grief when she learned it was her son's flight that had slammed into her husband's workplace. The elder Bernard Brown, who was in the Navy, said he had a serious talk with his son before the trip because he was afraid of flying. To be honest, Brown told NBC, we talked about death. And I just told him, don't be afraid. Just listen to what the people tell you and the instructions. You'll be all right. You'll be fine. He said, Daddy, I'm scared. And I said, hey, don't be scared. Don't be afraid to die, because we are all going to die someday. I believe that if Bernard Curtis Brown II was here today, he would be following his elder Bernard Brown's footsteps and joining the Navy.
Another sixth grader on that ill-fated school trip was Asia Cottom. Asia had a talent for science and math and hoped to be a pediatrician one day. She also loved Tweety Bird from the Looney Tunes, and her mom Michelle told NBC News that she was dressed in her Tweety gear for the flight that day. Above all, she says her daughter had a deep faith at just 11 years old, and that comforted Michelle after Asia's tragic death. God had a much higher calling for her. He took a child that just loved him and had a blind faith in him. Like most children believe in Santa Claus, this child believed in God. Who better to show the world Jesus than through a child? Amen, Miss Cottom. Amen. I believe that if Asia Cottom was still alive today, she would recently be finishing up her pediatric residency and would undoubtedly be showing the grace and love of God to all those in her community.
Christine Lee Hansen, just 2 years old, was the youngest of the victims on 9/11. She was traveling with her parents, Sue Kim Hansen and Peter Hansen, to California for vacation. She was supposed to be going to Disneyland, but was killed when the terrorists slammed the flight into the South Tower, World Trade Center 2, at 9:03 a.m. Peter Hansen was able to call his father before the plane hit and tell him goodbye on behalf of his little family. I believe if Christine was alive today, she'd be working to get her animation degree to make movies for Disney eventually.
The third 11-year-old classmate on the trip was Rodney Dickens. A classmate told the Washington Post that Rodney was the nicest kid who loved to help other kids with their homework. He also loved Pokemon. I believe if Rodney was still alive today, he would be working to find more games for Pokemon and watch more.
Juliana Valentine McCord was just 4 years old the day she died on United 175. The deaths of Juliana McCord and her mother Ruth on Flight 175 represent one of the crazy coincidences of the day in which part of a family survived the tragedy while part was lost. Ruth McCord's brother, Ron Clifford, was a software salesman working in the North Tower when First American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the skyscraper.
He managed to get out before the tower fell, but he witnessed United 175 slam into the South Tower, not knowing at the time that his sister and niece were on board. Clifford told ABC News, "I think when I was on the floor saying the Lord's Prayer, when the second plane hit. Just in a strange way, maybe Ruth guided me out of there." Ruth and Juliana were also going on to spend time at Disneyland on their planned California vacation.
Juliana would be 21 years old, and she would probably be following in her uncle's footsteps to work with software design.
The last two children killed on 9/11 aboard Flight 77 when it slammed into the Pentagon were sisters Dana Falkenberg, 3, and Zoe Falkenberg, 8.
The Falkenberg sisters were killed with their parents, Charles Falkenberg and Leslie Whittington, both 45. They were on their way to Australia via California for 2 months. The Maryland family had missed an earlier connecting flight and tragically boarded Flight 77 instead. Curly-haired Dana, born a bit later in life, was seen as a miracle child to her parents, family friends said. Zoe was beloved by family and friends, was a top student at school, and loved Girl Scouts, ballet, and swim team.
I wish I could know more all about their lives, but I am grateful to now know what little I do. I pray that you will share this story and make their names known. We've heard so little about the tiniest victims of 9/11, but their lives were precious in His sight, and their memories matter.
I believe if Zoe was alive, she would pursue her career in swim and join the Olympics team.
If Dana were still alive, she would be 20 years old and would most likely be a comedian because she enjoyed confidence and robust behavior and loved to make her grandparents laugh.
Guys, if you could just line up in the front, we're going to, Daryl McGill will come back and sing a tribute song.
There's a calm surrender to the rush of day when the heat of a rolling wind can be turned away. An enchanted moment, and it sees me through. It's enough for this restless warrior just to be with you. And can you feel the love tonight? It is where we are. It's enough for this wide-eyed wanderer that we've got this far. And can you feel the love tonight? How it's laid to rest. It's enough to make kings and vagabonds lead the very best. There's a time for everyone if they only learn that the twisting kaleidoscope moves us all in turn. There's a rhyme and a reason to the wild outdoors when the heart of this star-crossed voyager beats in time with yours. And can you feel the love tonight? It is where we are. It's enough for this wide-eyed wanderer that we've got this far. And can you feel the love tonight? to make kings and vagabonds lead the very best. It's enough to make kings and vagabonds lead the very best.
Thank you very much for all of you for participating in this. I know it is emotionally difficult because if you think about it, the students and the children, the victims, are approximately your age. And so we very, very much appreciate that you would come and literally put your face with their faces. So thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. You can go now. It doesn't say that, but we're very pleased tonight to have Ray Lynch, who will read a letter that was sent from Florida Governor Rick Scott. Ray, thanks very much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have a letter from Governor Scott, but there's one thing that I do want to say beforehand. Last year we were dealing with Hurricane Irma at this time, and there was only a handful of us here, and we stuck these two flags in the plaque, and they've stayed there for a full year. That's respect. Dear friends, as governor, I am proud to join all attending the Martin County Annual 9/11 Candlelight Tribute in honoring the memory of those lost 17 years ago today during the worst terror attack on our nation. On this day, we offer condolences to the families impacted by this unthinkable tragedy and pray for those mourning the loss of their loved ones. Today, as we remember one of the darkest days in the history of the United States, we also honor the brave men and women of our armed forces who currently serve and protect our freedom. I believe we must take every opportunity we can to thank these servicemen and women for dedicating their lives to serving our state and country. We stand behind them and their families and continue to mourn those who tragically lost their lives. Throughout the past year, Florida's law enforcement community has been tested. I want to thank all of our law enforcement for putting their lives on the line to keep Florida's families safe. Our state's continuously decreasing crime rate is at a 47-year low and is a reminder that the dedication and hard work of Florida's law enforcement officers show every day. We must continue to support and thank them every day for their commitment to keeping Florida families safe. On behalf of all Floridians, we will continue to keep all victims of the 2001 terrorist attacks and their families in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you again for your commitment to honoring and remembering the heroes and those affected by the horrendous acts on September 11th, 2001. Sincerely, Rick Scott, Governor. Thank you.
Ray, thank you very much. We will now have a speaker from the Fire Department of New York. Okay. We have a very special guest with us tonight, Jennifer Hoskins Tomko from Clarity Health Solutions, who works for the World Trade Center Registry Health Program, who is designated by the United States government to provide mental health services and counseling to the World Trade Center first responders and victims in dealing with the effects of this tragic event. She specializes in dealing with PTSD, a disease that is well known and affects first responders and military personnel who were involved in these impactful situations. Welcome.
I'm so grateful to be here today. So thank you so much for hearing what I have to say about what I do on a daily basis with the first responders that I have the honor of treating. I am a psychotherapist that specializes in trauma in Jupiter, Florida. And due to this specialty, I've been given the honor of working with first responders from 9/11 who have retired to sunny South Florida. While I have a deep respect and admiration for all of my clients, I certainly have a special place in my heart for the 9/11 first responders and their families. Some of my clients utilized therapy offered to them around the time of the crisis, while others did not. Either way, the images, sounds, and smells continue to haunt them 17 years later. Despite the time separating today from the events in 2001, they are still navigating through the emotional debris from that day. They continue to feel vulnerable each year around the anniversary of 9/11. Some families have been driven apart and others have been brought closer together. I consider it my role to support my clients to continue to help them cherish their lives as retirees as they cling to the past memories of having two families, one within the confines of their own home and another amongst like-minded comrades. They often can't talk to their spouses or friends about what it was like to live through 9/11. It is too traumatizing. It makes them feel too vulnerable to share their experiences. It is also too easy to vicariously traumatize those that they love. So they keep it all in, and I consider it my job, my duty, really, to help these responders to become grounded again and enjoy their current lives. To help them accept that the images that are burned into their memories will never be gone, but they have the capacity to cope with them and enjoy their life today. I consider it an honor when I hear their stories. I consider it an honor when I get to work with the spouses and the children of these heroes, but don't call them heroes. It's always met with resistance. They're riddled with guilt for being the one that survived, no matter how grueling that 9/11 was for them and how long they continue to deal with the memories. They continue to believe that they could have done better or wonder why they were the ones who survived. Out of respect for them, I won't call them heroes, but I do think of them as angels. The guardian angels of the country who continued month after month being traumatized time and again for the sake of doing what was right for the rest of our country. Somehow they banded us all together by modeling service and unity during that difficult time. I can't help myself. I still think of them as heroes, not only because of the role that they played during 9/11 and the months that followed, but because they continue to serve as an example of resiliency, determination, and hope for us all, just as they did in 2001. Don't get me wrong, while the challenges of 9/11 linger on, my first responders are jovial people. I can count on them to be motivated in treatment, but also to make me laugh hysterically. They are down to earth, caring, engaging, and hilarious. They're animated storytellers with booming voices and emphatic hand gestures. As I wrap up, I refuse to leave this on a somber note, since my sessions rarely do. And my clients wouldn't want me to focus on the hardships. They would want me to talk about all that they have learned about appreciating life, about their memories of cooking and working out with their friends, and the importance of laughing, socializing, and growth. So one last thing, I want to share a story when you're outside my office, what it must be like as one of my colleagues. After having a long day of 3 or 4 of my first responders back to back, one of my colleagues came out at the end of the day and she says to me, "Jen, you had a lot of really angry people today." And I said, What do you mean? She said, she's like, "Yeah, everybody was yelling all day at you." I said, No. They were my New Yorkers. So I have a great respect for each and every person who's here, and I really appreciate having this opportunity to talk about the effects of PTSD and the importance of getting treatment. Even 17 years later, we continue to need to have refreshers in how to tolerate those images that come into our minds. So thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you, Jennifer, very much. I'd like to go off script just for another moment. Those of us that came out to remember what happened 17 years ago, we multiply this event through our friends in the news media, and for all the folks that had come from our local news media to cover this, including Martin County Television and all of our network affiliates, we very much appreciate that you would take some time from your busy schedules to come and remember with us. So if we could give the folks that came from our news media a hand, I'd appreciate it. There are tens of thousands of Martin County residents and residents on the Treasure Coast that couldn't go to an event tonight, so we're so appreciative that you would cover it for us. We have with us tonight from the Emmanuel Lutheran Church here in Palm City, Pastor Rebecca Craig. Pastor. Here she is.
Don't worry, I promise I won't give a sermon. However, 9/11 is very personal to me, just like it is to probably everybody here. Because 17 years ago today, I also lost a friend, Randy Drake, when the second plane hit the South Tower. And I had several other friends who should have died that day, but by the grace of God, did not. There was Dave, who had just 2 minutes earlier been standing in the area of the Pentagon that got hit, but just happened to have walked out the door as the plane was slamming into the Pentagon. There was Craig, whose offices were hit in the Pentagon, but he himself was in a meeting on the other side, but he lost his entire staff. My friend Jeff, who was on a plane that morning, headed to Vegas to get married, and watched out of the window of the airplane he was on as 36 of his friends and coworkers were killed in the World Trade Center in the offices he normally would have been working in that day. So for those of us who remember that day, many of our lives were altered forever. The grief that we felt was unimaginable. Our nation was altered forever. And for 17 years, we've subsequently been embroiled in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it is so easy for us to turn to hate and fear as a result of how our lives were so tragically changed. September 11th, 2001 is the event I believe that ultimately set me on the path to becoming a pastor, because it was the day I lost all illusions about worldly notions of safety and security, and I began the process of reevaluating my life and my faith, reevaluating what really mattered in life and what didn't. And I chose love over hate, faith instead of fear, because there is only one thing in life that is certain. We never know what the next moment will bring, but we do know the promises of God. As the Gospel of John, the 11th chapter states, everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. So let us pray. Loving God, embrace all those who mourn this day for lost loved ones and friends, reminding them of your everlasting promises. We place them in your loving arms, the thousands of innocent lives that were lost on that unforgettable morning. We also remember the courage of the countless men and women who put their lives at risk in order to rescue and bring solace to the afflicted. Give comfort to those who continue to lose loved ones as a result of that day. Give wisdom to our leaders that such atrocities and violence may be brought to an end. Banish from the world the darkness that allows such hate to fester and grow. Banish from the world the injustices that lead to such anger and hatred. And convert the hearts of all who seek vengeance and destruction. Let your love rain down upon us, and let your peace flourish on the earth. Amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Now we're going to have a laying of a wreath. And while we do that, we're going to have members of the FDNY come forward and lay some roses down as well as they remember their brothers and sisters and loved ones.
Okay, obviously we can't do 343 brothers, so we're going to do 16 that were closest to my heart. Chief of Department, Peter Gansey. Deputy Commissioner Bill Feehan. Battalion Chief Ray Downey. Battalion Chief Oriole Palmer. My captain, Tom Farino, Engine 26. I drove him 95% of the time, and the 5% is why I'm here today. Firefighter, Dana Hannon, Engine 26. Firefighter, Bobby Spears, Engine 26. Firefighter, Paul Pansini, Engine 10, detail that data, Engine 26. Firefighter Paul Tagmeyer, Engine 4, that day detailed Engine 26. Lieutenant Bobby Hess, Ladder 76, ex-member of Engine 26. Lieutenant Bobby Regan, Ladder 118, ex-member of Engine 26. Firefighter John Heffernan, Ladder 11, ex-member of Engine 26. And Mike Fiore, Rescue 5. Never forgive, never forget.
I want to go off script for a moment because I know Dennis would never write this in here. Dennis, we're all here tonight for varying reasons. Love of our country, loss of a loved one. But all of this is put together year after year by the tireless efforts of a group of people led by one person. Dennis McKenna has battled ups and downs. People have thrown stones at him, shot arrows at him. He has never wavered from this passionate cause of his. He was there on 9/11, and he has kept this alive for those of us that have moved away from New York. And if it wasn't for him in this community, and I would also say in St. Lucie County as well, we wouldn't have any of these things. This remarkable monument, this reminder of what happened to us, the folks that were murdered. Because let's face it, that's what it was. It was murder. All over the United States of America, as you can imagine, every community wanted a piece of the World Trade Center. And they were nearly impossible to come by. And because of Dennis's connections and his efforts and his passion, we got several pieces. The Treasure Coast got several pieces. There's a beautiful monument at the Community Center or the Civic Center on US 1 in Port St. Lucie. This is a remarkable piece considering most communities, even much, much larger than ours, received pieces that you could hold in your hands. So then we would not have this monument if it wasn't for Dennis and others that worked hard to get them here. And then everything Dennis does is so remarkably thoughtful and planned. He had a procession bring these pieces down to give them the reverence that they deserved. Every year he contacts me months and months ahead of time, says, I got an idea, I want to do this, I want to do a thing, I'm going to notice, I'm going to get somebody, I'm going to get some volunteers, I'm going to get a donation. Now we all have a friend like Dennis. We all have people that would say, I've got a great idea, but it's the execution. Everyone's got an idea. It's the execution that most people fail at. Dennis has told me things that in the early days, before I knew him well, I would say, that'll be impossible. I'm going to put lights on top of the Roosevelt Bridge that will shine up like they do in New York City to represent the towers at the top of the Roosevelt Bridge. And he does it. I'm going to get a piece of a relic from the World Trade Center. I'm going to bring it down here so we can honor it. His newest endeavor is there's a small piece that the county still has that's not on display anywhere. And he says, we need to get that piece back, and I'm going to get a trailer, and I'm going to wrap it so that the piece can come out of the trailer, and I'm going to bring it to local schools so school children, not most likely, who absolutely were not alive on 2001, so that they will never forget. And I'll bet you $1 he's going to do that. I'll help him. You'll all help him. So I just wanted to take a second, and I know he doesn't like it. And before we acknowledge him, everyone has to understand that Dennis doesn't do this by himself. He has the passion, as much as Dennis is passionate, so is his loving wife, Lorraine. And they're two beautiful children. And you can, if you're the parent of a teenager, or if your kids are grown and you had teenagers, or you are a teenager, you can imagine when Dad says, I got a plan, we're going somewhere, we're doing something else, I need your help, get in the car, we're going to take care of some stuff. His son and daughter go right along because it's a passion for the entire family. Let's give the McKennas an unbelievable gratitude, a debt of gratitude. Okay, this will be the last year I'm invited back to do this. We're going to have now a bagpiper, and we're actually also going to have Doc Holloway sing a song in our annual tribute. But before we do that, since we'll basically end with that, I would like to invite Dennis to come up and just say a few words. I know he would prefer to have the spotlight on others, but I just want him to have an opportunity to share from his heart. Dennis.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. I'll be honest with you, it hasn't been easy at all. And if it wasn't for my wife for 30 years I'm been with, I don't think I would be able to do as much as I did. And it's not so much the drive I have inside me, it's what happened in New York City and the people that we left there. Father Judge was a good friend of mine, and he was the chaplain for FDNY. And when I found that he had paid the ultimate sacrifice, it put me over the edge. And I went on Vesey Street and I sat against the wall and I just started to cry and look up at God. And I was having a meltdown. 18 days there. And a gentleman came out of nowhere, Ron Nish, who we flew from California to here, one of our events over at the Martin County High School, and who got up on the stage and told the exact same story I'm telling you, that he found me in stress and he put his arm around me. And he was Seventh-day Evangelist and I'm Roman Catholic. And at that moment, it didn't make a difference. We both believed in God. And he helped me. And he gave me his Bible. And that Bible now is known as the Responding Bible throughout the nation. It's been to Aurora, Colorado. It's been to Newtown, Connecticut. It's been over in Las Vegas. I have a letter from the mayor in Las Vegas thanking me. And it just went from disaster. And now it's with Molly Tibbet. It's with her family. And it just keeps going on and on. And it's a shame that this Bible has to keep going on. On September 15th, September 11th, 2015, I think it was, the Pope blessed the Bible at Madison Square Garden. Bishop John O'Hara from Staten Island took it and had it blessed. And it has a diary that follows it. And in the diary it has where it's been, and the Archdiocese of New York City wrote in it that the Pope did bless it. But the point I'm trying to bring out is that PTSD is not to be taken lightly. I have it. And my wife dealt with it, and my kids deal with it. And I'm getting better. Thanks to Jen. She's a big help. When my teenage kids act up, I go to Jen and we have our session, and she calls Patrick up and Michelle, and she talks to them, and she helps me. And we had a brother that went into bad stress, and at 9 o'clock at night, she was there for the brother. And it's something that I found, that a lot of the alcoholics and a lot of people who abuse these drugs are doing it from panic disorder and various traumatic stresses that they went through in life. And this is where they get their addiction from, to cover up their feelings. And having a mental health people and going to those people has helped my family and helped myself 100%. And I'm able to do things like this because this is part of my therapy. This is what keeps me going. This is what keeps me the way I am. My wife, I was going to say my mother. My wife is a big supporter, and she has gone through a lot with me. There's days I say the words I can't say now, and I walk out of the house, and 10 minutes later I come back in and tell her I love her. So this is what gives me the drive. And to have the FDNY guys here, my brothers for life, it's an honor for me to be with my brother. So I don't want to make tonight a drama night of me, but I just want to get it out that the PTSD is something not to take lightly. And you can function, you can be part of society, and you're okay. But you have to address it, acknowledge it, talk about it, and take care of it. That you need to do. Thank you for everyone being here. Thank you, Commissioner Ed Ciampi. I will give you $50 at the end. Everyone here, I look around, is special. There's a man standing there with a saxophone. Why is he there? Why is he there? Because I visioned in my head, back in 9/11, how beautiful New York was, and how these people dirtied and hurt the people who I love, New Yorkers. And I'm sorry that for any Floridians, but my heart is in New York. And so I said to myself, how do I heal that? How do I take that vision out of me? And I said, I know how. I remember there was a beautiful songwriter who played a song who I absolutely loved and thought it was a beautiful song. And everyone here knows the song. And Mr. Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. So hearing that song took away the clouds of smoke, the body alarms laying in the ditch that we couldn't get to the pit. And just hearing that sound at night, beep, 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 we knew there was someone to it. So all that I'm trying to filter out, and it's hard. But having songs like this, songwriters, are so beautiful and so helpful when you get to these points, you know? So that's why Doc is here, and he is an amazing saxophone player. And I'd also like to thank Darryl, who can sing a note. Do we think Darryl could sing a note? Handsome looking guy. And I'd like to thank the Reverend Pastor who came here. And I apologize because I just got her today. I know Ed's telling me I gotta go, right? Ordered $50. And I just found out her today, and we just spoke, and she came and she said, I'll help. So these are all beautiful people. It's not only me, it's everybody. And thank yous all, and Dennis McCarthy over there with the bagpipers, his father's FDNY. And thank yous all for being here. God bless yous. And I want to ask all of yous, please, be here next year. Not for me, but for 343 firefighters and 3,000 people. God bless you, and be good.
I cut his hour-and-a-half long speech. Figured most of us need to get home before midnight. Dennis, it's remarkable. I wouldn't even know you're from New York. You don't have a lick of an accent. It's amazing. I thought I was going to be late, so I told my executive aide, I need you to go by the Cummings library and speak to Dennis. And she said, how will I know which one is Dennis? I said, Dennis is the Dems and Does guys. Just ask for Dennis. He's growing his hair back. Looked like a hippie. I told Stacy to find him. He will be cue ball bald, and he will speak like he just got here from Brooklyn. And I'm not that wrong. We have two exciting things here, but before we get into the ending music, I just wanted to say two things. Turn to the person next to you and say thank you for coming. Because Dennis and his family could put these beautiful events on, but if you all didn't decide to come, then we've accomplished nothing. The other thing I want to be very careful of is when you're pulling out, this is Matheson, this is a very busy road. People are not paying that much attention. Whether you're walking in the parking lot or exiting, please be careful. The last thing we want tonight is a tragedy on top of remembering this solemn occasion. So with that in mind, what I think would be appropriate is that we have Doc Holloway come up and play his fantastic sax, and when he was done, as we're departing, we will have Dennis McCarthy with the beautiful sounds of a lone piper send us on our way. I would like to say to Dennis, thank you so much for including me. It is an honor to be here, to be able to remember for myself personally, and for all of you, it's God bless you all, God bless America, and with that, Doc, please come forward.
If anybody knows the words, you may sing with me.
Politician and the organizer fighting for the microphone.
How was that? Was it what I said? Ed, should I conclude it?
Send him home, Dennis.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our 9/11 tribute, and I'd like to call up at this time a very special member of the USA 9/11 first responders. Dennis McCarthy will play a song that we will never forget, and we heard it over and over, but it means a lot.